can see my screen now. So I'm going to continue from where I started, but as I promised that I'm going to show you the first C program in this class, I'm going to do that. Don't worry. Well, okay. So without much ado, let's get started. 6 people. Okay, we can discuss this later. I mean, let's get started with the class. Um, so I talked about finiteness. I talked about Donald Knuth. I think that part was, I mean, quite simple, and I'm sure it is clear to you. So let's come to the second criterion of definiteness of the features of an algorithm as proposed by Dr. Knuth. So that is definiteness, which means that each step of an algorithm must be precisely, that is basically rigorously and unambiguously defined, which means so I mean, which is something which you do in a programming language. So I mean, there is no way you can I mean, write an instruction in a programming language which will have double meanings, right? So the programming languages are designed in such a way. But this is some time back, right? When so at this point of time, good programming languages were not available, and the developers of the programming language took cue from this maybe. One exception would be, so suppose we don't necessarily write a program or an algorithm for a computer, right? For example, we can basically write algorithms for any automaton to work. It can be a lift system. It can be an artificial intelligence based anything. It can be a robot also. So there is as I told that there are a lot of things which you can do using um, C. So using C, you can also write device drivers. I mean, you can do a lot of things using C, as I told. So programming languages, programs can be written to control machines also. So suppose you write a program to control a robot, and you ask the robot to prepare a cup of tea for you, and you give instructions like add a bit of sugar, boil the water enough. So these type of instructions would not be definite instructions, right? Because you have mentioned how much sugar or how long to boil, right? So but this you cannot do in a programming language, given programming language designed for the computers. So this is about definiteness. Input. Well, a program may or may not have an explicit input, like okay, I missed something. So in the example which I gave last day, the program to find a maximum of n numbers, that satisfies definiteness, because there is nothing in the instructions which are ambiguous, right? Okay. And about input, in the example algorithm to find the maximum, there were n inputs, right? But you can write a program without an explicit uh, input. For example, you can ask the computer to print your name on the screen. So there is no real input, right? But there has to be an output. But can't you write a program without an output? Of course you can. But that's not the purpose of writing a programming language, right? At the end of the program, you expect the program to I mean, do something about the task, right? So that has to be so basically there has to be an output which can be printed on the screen, which can be stored in the file. It has to have an impact on the data which that particular file is using, or some resources it must be using, right? So it must leave a stamp persistent stamp on that particular data. I'm not going into the details of basically operating system, but this is the case. And there is another feature which is called effectiveness. So the operations, about output, the example program finding the maximum has an output. What is that output? The maximum number in the array. And there is another criterion, that is effectiveness, which means all the operations must be sufficiently basic so that it can done using in a finite number of steps. So that includes the finiteness criterion, using pencil and paper, which basically means that, so this is something which you will be able to do using a programming language, but which means that you write a program to do something effective. You don't do anything deliberately for the program to fumble. For example, if I add a criterion that performs step 4, what is step 4? Step 4 in the algorithm, what was step 4? Step 4 is this check, right? If AI greater than max, max equal to AI. So it is going to go to that particular step unconditionally. But suppose you add a condition that performs step 4 if 4 is the largest integer n for which there is a solution to the equation, etc., etc. You can see a very complex equation. So this is not expected, right? So all the steps must must be done without any without solving any complex condition, which will slow down the entire process. So the bottom line is, you write a program to perform something worthwhile. So you see that these were designed by Knuth long time back, and after that the programming languages have evolved quite a bit. So all these problems don't really exist anymore. So the way of evaluating an algorithm, or putting it some other words, talking about the expected features of an algorithm, we talk about something else nowadays. We talk about complexities. So what is a complexity? Complexity refers to two different kinds of complexities. One is time complexity and the other is space complexity. I will cover this in details in the class. So this is just the introduction. So okay, please stop me whenever I'm not audible, right? Because it will not be possible for me to know that. And please keep your microphones off, keep your videos off, so that consumes the least possible bandwidth in this call. All right. I was talking about time complexity and space complexity. So what is time complexity? So it is, it needs more details. To put it in a very simple way, it is basically the number of steps in the algorithm. So let's go back to the algorithm we discussed, right? So I should have put a slide here for the algorithm. Anyway, sorry about that. So how many steps are there? S1 is a step, S2 is a step, while is a step, right? And how long is this while loop going to go on? In the worst case, the comparison needs to be done with the last number, right? Suppose the array is sorted. Suppose the array is sorted in decreasing order, and the maximum number is at the end, right? Maximum number is at the end. So for in that particular case, the check has to be done every time for all the numbers. But anyway, you don't know that in advance. You don't assume anything about uh, the input array, whether it is sorted or not. Anyway, you are going to make that n-1 checks. Why n-1? Why not n? Why not n? Can anyone answer?
Because we don't need to compare the first number with itself.
Yeah, exactly. So we already put the first number in max, right? And we need to check that with the remaining numbers. Simple enough question and simple enough answer. So so basically there will be n-1 different checks plus so this while loop is going to run for n-1 times, plus there will be 3 more steps. But it basically boils down to the size of the input, right? It basically boils down to the number of times you do the check. So it is believed that assignment operations and IO operations, all these things, um, okay, let's ignore the basically the IO operation. Let's assume that we already have that array. Assignment operations are negligible. The maximum time taken by a computer is in the checks, because you need to do a lot of reshuffling. So you have to check long numbers, right? And there are internal hardware to do that. The longer are the numbers, the more time they're going to take. So the complexity, the time complexity of algorithm is a function of the number of comparisons. So here the number of comparison is n-1, right? So where n is the size of the input. So it is basically the size of it is basically the function of the size of the input, and that is going to change with the algorithm. So in this case, it is simple enough algorithm, and it is the most efficient algorithm to find the maximum number. If you don't assume any structure, any arrangement in the array, if you assume that the array is already sorted, the input array is already sorted in decreasing order, then you just you can basically, please turn off your video. Someone is Abhinav Thakur, please turn off your video. Yeah, if you assume that, then there is no checking required, right? The last number is the answer. But if you don't assume anything about the data, then this is the best algorithm you can write. This is the fastest algorithm you're going to write, because you have to check all the remaining numbers except the first one, except the number with which you are checking the remaining one. So going back to the slide, yeah, I will, in the lecture I will put an additional so when I'm going to put this up, I will put the example program just before this slide, so that you don't need to refer to that by going back 5 to 6 slides. So if you can look into this, time complexity is function of n. Forget about order of n. I will discuss that later. So it is function of n, basically function of n-1. It doesn't matter. When n is large, n and n-1 are not much different. So this is an idea of the modern or the latest notion of efficiency, or yeah, efficiency, and of course the desired features of an algorithm. So lesser is time complexity, the better it is an algorithm. So that is a desired quality. And there is something called space complexity. That is the space taken by all the variables used in the program. So this is also a function of the array, right? So there are 2 more variables here, right? I and max. Mostly it is dominated by the size of the array, right? And if n is large, then other 2 variables are negligible. So it is also a function of the size of the data set. Okay, so this was about algorithms. This was about what an algorithm is, but this was, this was not everything. This is just an introduction. And there is something called data structures. Data structures and algorithms go hand in hand. So it doesn't really make any sense to create two different courses, one of data structure and the other is algorithms. Because if one is the body, the other one is the soul. The algorithms work with the data structures and the data structures are manipulated by algorithms. So what is a data structure? So, okay, so I was talking about data structure. Oh, sorry. So data structure, according to the Corman book, is a way to store and organize data in order to facilitate access and modifications. I will explain what that is. According to Knuth, information with structural relations. People are still joining. Oh gosh. That's not good. Anyway.
Sir, actually,
Yeah.
people get
Yeah.
out of the meeting because of network problems. So, like, they join again.
Oh, I see. I see. No. That's not the case. So, oh, okay. That can be the case. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Information structures are same as data structures. We will use the term data structure here. So, Knuth talked about information structures. Information with structural relationships between data elements. So let's take the example of array, right? The array which we discussed in the example. So array is contiguous pieces of data. So if you can see the picture, there is a box which is the first box is A0, the first element, and the consecutive element is A1. So this is how it is stored in the memory also. So in the next memory location you have A1, in the next memory location you have A2. So that will give you direct access to the data. So you know exactly what A5 is. You don't have to search for it. So so a data structure consists of two elements. One are data values, like in our case the numbers stored in the array A, right? And the operations defined on the data. So what are the operations here? We can search, we can find maximum, we can find minimum, and we can insert data, we can delete data from it, right? So this is about static array. So we already know the elements of the array beforehand, and we fill the array with those elements, and we feed the whole array to the computer. Okay, but this arrays can also be dynamic. So suppose you tell the program that I am going to define array somewhere down the line, and when required you basically create an array, and you either during the runtime you ask for the input from the user, or you read it from a file. That is also possible. So we'll all discuss this. So there can be other data structures like stack. Stack is something where you can do insertions and deletions from only one end. The other end is blocked, right? So I will discuss this, later on. Stack has very important applications, like I will be talking about function. In function calls, stack is implemented inside, and there can be queues. And I think queue is the most popular data structure. Everyone has seen a queue. Everyone has been a part of a queue at least once in life, right? So queue is so whenever you so I remember a queue when I was in Pune on the day. So basically during the lockdown. Just before the day when the government instructed that all the basically the liquor shops will be open, there were not a soul. And the next day when I came out of my apartment, all in a basically a gladiator attire to save myself from corona, because Pune is a hotspot. Pune is the most infected city uh, currently, and its situation was similar then. So I could see a long queue in front of 2 liquor shops. So that's why I will basically remember queue for the rest of my life. So what is the basic rule about a queue? You you can insert data, or in this case people, from one end, that is the rear, that's the end of the queue, right? And you delete from the front. So someone who takes the item from the shop, the first one basically leaves the queue, the next one gets the chance. So this is called first come first serve. So this is I mean used in real life, and it has very important applications in operating system, in process scheduling. But there can be other kinds of priorities, like in this case the priority is first come first serve. The first person in will be the first person to go out. Same for the data. But someone can change this priority, like suddenly a very important person comes in the queue, and he starts saying hum jahan khare hote hain. What was the line? So I was talking about a dialogue by the Big B, who got, yeah, हम जहां पर खड़े होते हैं line वहीं पे शुरू होता है. So sorry, my English is not, my Hindi is not good. So someone says that I am going to be the first person in the line, though I am the last person to enter. So in that case, the priority changes, right? The priority changes. So the most important person first. So these are all part of basically scheduling algorithms. Very important for operating system. We are using one operating system, and then lots of processes are going on within this particular transmission, and the scheduling is controlled by the operating system. We will talk about this also, and we will write codes to implement this. Don't worry about that. And I will make you to write the same code with some modifications, and I'm sure you will be able to do it with flying colors. Okay. So why are we studying programming languages, or what are programming languages? So languages are a medium of communication between human beings, animals, all the creatures, right? I feel that in a movie I watched, it's I think the Lord of the Rings, if I'm not wrong, there was some trees who whispered with each other. I'm not sure if that happens in reality, but yes, ants, right, not Narnia. Okay, Narnia also is there. Okay, anyway, so why do we write algorithms? In order to communicate with the computer. So there is a vast field of research called human computer interaction. So the better we can communicate ourselves to the computer, we can utilize the power of computer in a, yeah. Someone is talking? Pradeep Vishwakarma or no? Okay, anyway. So better we will able to communicate, better we will be able to get a complex work done by the computer, right? That's why computer algorithms were designed. And the purpose of computer language or programming language, apart from, so as opposed to the natural language of the human language, that is the language in which we are talking, and an area of research in which I also work is natural language processing, NLP. Natural language processing is a booming area of research. People have been working on a long time. So that is on processing of human languages, but using computers. But this is about programming language, that is between human being and the computer. And a good programming language ensures definiteness criterion. So programming language ensures that as a part of the programming language construct. input and output are also controlled, but finiteness should be, you see, as I told that you can write an infinite loop, but you should not. That should be ensured by the programmer. So about the use of programming languages, another quote, coding is not just code, that is a live thing to serve someone, right? So Ming Song is not that well known a person, he is an author, but this is a nice quote. Like, you want the society a better place, you want the you want the best out of the uh, automatic systems, right? Not only the computers. And I put a quote of my mind. I am the least known person of all the persons here. So my quote is to we write computer programs to enslave the tireless, fast and accurate monster before it becomes your master, which I see that it is fast becoming. But you have, the computer has some wonderful qualities, right? So it is tireless, it is diligent, it is fast, and it is accurate. These qualities are not there in human beings. So better we write a code, the better we can utilize the faculties or the qualities of the computer. And I did some research on this. Do we write coding, do we do coding only for getting a very good grade at schools or maybe in CS 3101? Is that all? Or some people do it as a profession, right? There can be professional coders at many companies, right? Including Google. Maybe not, maybe not. So if you can see my screen, uh, coding is a brain, can be a brain stimulant. That is, it can improve our brain. So this is a study by, in 2014, by researchers at the University of Passau, University of Magdeburg, CMU, Georgia Tech, and the Leibniz Institute of Neurobiology, and the METOP Research Institute on 17 seasoned programmers. They put fMRI scan machine, that is functional magnetic resonance imaging technology, which can basically identify the activities of the neuron impulses in our brain. And they did this while they were writing intense codes. They were done on 17 people, and they found serious activities on different different lobes or different parts of the brain associated with language processing, memory, attention, logic, and of course something else, that is basically creativity. So which means that if you do coding seriously with a lot of dedication, it's likely that all the important parts of the brain are going to be charged up, and more you use a brain, the better it becomes, right? Like if you heard of artificial neural networks, what do we do in order to get it working in a better way? We train it, right? More we train, the weights learned inside, in this case the the neurons inside gets basically charged up, and we get to use our brain in a better way. I'm not sure whether we want to do that, but if we want, we will be in a better position. And this study was published at ICAC, so it is not the ICAC board. Yes, it is not that board. I am also from that board. So it is not that. It stands for International Conference of Software Engineering. So it is a core A-star conference. So A-star is the biggest ranking which you can give to a conference. So it is a study published there, right? So maybe I'm not sure if for that reason or not, the new education system, proposed education system, will proposes to teach computer science coding from class 6. Okay, so I am going to show you about code. Maybe I will go to the greater details later on. Let me open my slides, the slides for the next day. Yeah. Okay, I think I need to start presenting again. Yeah. A window. Yes, you can see the slides, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So I will cover this soon, but before that, so this is the first program. This is the first C program, and I have already created a video on this, which I'm not really very happy about. So I am not really confident to show that to you right now, but I will do some work on it, and I will try to upload it to YouTube. So this is the first C program. Okay, so you can see that it has two different sections. The first one is hash include stdio.h. What is this? Yes, this is the hello world program. Yes, this is the hello world program. Right, you are right. But I'm not going to print hello world. I'm going to print got started.
SPDIO standard input output.
Yeah, you can discuss, you can have the discussion offline. Can you please turn off your mic? Yeah, thank you. So stdio.h is a header file. What is a header file? Header file contains a set of functions. Yes, I will explain everything. Don't be so impatient. Header files contain some functions which are poorly written in C to be used readily by a user. For example, me. So I want to print the string got started on the screen along with the three notes of exclamations. So what I do for that, I borrow printf function from stdio.h, that is standard input output header, and in order to borrow that you have to put a hash and write include, which means you are including this particular header file stdio.h, and that header file contains printf, the definition of printf, and you need to know that in advance. For example, I know how to use it, and most importantly, you need to write a main function, void main, and then the empty brackets, and within curl bracket if you have to write the body of main. So main is the soul of a C program. A C program must have a main and everything defined within that. So within main, I'm calling printf, and when I run this code, it prints on the console or on the terminal the string. This simple enough program. You can also print hello world. Okay, I will explain more, don't worry. So main is a special and mandatory function in C that indicates the start and end of a program. So there has to be exactly one main, and the body of main is defined within the curl brackets. Each statement is terminated by semicolon, and usually lowercase is followed, upper case is reserved for symbolic constants. Okay, all right. So I think it is time to give you a demo, right? Okay, so I am not sharing this one anymore. Stop sharing. Okay, let me stop sharing this. Let me share something which you will find more interesting, I believe. Okay, let me share my entire screen. I think that way it will work better. Okay, so that you will be able to know entire screen. I am sharing my entire screen. Click on the icon dev C++. I already sent you a tutorial on dev C++. I will send you another tutorial, and I think you are smart enough to to do that on your own. Okay. So I am clicking on this icon dev C++, which is there, which is a shortcut, which is there on my desktop. And what I do, everyone can see, right? Hello, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can see, right? Okay. I am creating a new source file. You can do that by Control N. So this is the new source file. Okay. So I am writing the first C program. Okay. So I put hash include stdio.h. I write void main and I print. So the function is printf, not print. Keep this in mind. It is printf, and you have to put double quotes, and you have to write, okay, hello world. Okay, and okay, that's all. I'm saving it, Control S, and I'm saving it in a folder which contains all C files. It's called hello world. Yeah, so I've saved my program, right? This is the program, and now I am looking to run it. How do I run it? I go to execute. First, you don't need to understand why I'm doing this. You just follow the steps blindly. I'm going to explain to you later on. So this is compile, or you can type F9. So I'm compiling this. So in the bottom, okay, oh, I did a mistake. So I told that every statement will end with a semicolon, and I did that mistake. So I save it again. I'm compiling again. It is compilation is going on, and you see at the bottom, if you do this, it shows 0 errors, 0 warnings. So I've written the code in a correct way, so it is compilable. It has compiled. Now I need to run it. Why do I need to run it? Because I want to print hello world on the computer screen. So I need to run F10. If you can see in a black screen, can you see hello world printed? Can you see hello world printed on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you have printed hello world, and if you press any key to continue, that screen will go away. Okay, that's all I know about, I mean, basically dev C++. I usually use GC++. So I think for the starters, this is very handy, and you can, so this, I mean, this is a very simple program. We are going to do more complex programs than this. We'll come to that. And I will give you another demo. For the Linux users, I wish I could given you a demo using Linux, but to make up for this, I have installed gwin64. That gives you the exact same interface as you will get in GCC. So if you do this, you'll be able to do the same thing in GCC also. Here there are some programs already written. So there is a Vim operator, which is an editor, Vim editor, sorry. And I'm opening a program which I actually wrote previously. So Vim test C, which means test.c. This is a C code. So it prints hello. Okay. And for the people who already know Vim, you have to press escape and then colon, you have to write quit, and it will come out of the screen. And to compile, you have to write GCC. GCC stands for GNU C compiler. Okay. If you want to store the output somewhere, you have to write the name of that file. For my case, it is test. And then comes the file name. So GCC -o. So Vim test C, I opened it and I'm executing it using GCC -o test, because I want to store, I want test to be my output file. What is output file? I will explain. So output file basically the file which you want to execute. So this is the compilation. Test.c is my input source code. So after you compile this, after you run this command, it takes some time to do the compilation. ls-c means you list the files in the reverse chronological order. So test.exe is created. If you run this in Linux, test.out will be created, or test. Something else, doesn't matter, and you can execute this by running test.exe. You'll get hello. But this is only for the GCC users, the people who are conversant with Windows. You can use devc++ or any other compiler. So any other IDE based system, I have no problems with that, except the fact that I don't really know everything about them. You have to figure themselves out yourself. I can help you, but yeah. And I believe me, there is very simple. See, devc++ is very simple. Just type Google tutorial on devc++, and you will get plenty of them. Okay, I'm sure you will be able to figure this out and run the first program and get back to me next day, where I will show you more programs. I think so. I hope your anxiousness about writing a C program finally, after the long background which I've given, which I think is necessary for you, helped you to run this first program and